A staged reading of the one-man play Goldwater, Mr. Conservative, takes place tomorrow evening at 7:30 in the John Paul Theater at Phoenix College. Following the performance, ASU pollster Bruce Merrill will moderate a discussion about Arizona's iconic senator and what it means to be a Goldwater conservative. Joining me with a preview is ASU pollster Bruce Merrill, whose extensive resume includes a lot of work for Barry Goldwater. And also here is Centennial Theater Foundation Director Ben Tyler, who wrote Mr. Conservative back in 1994. Good to have you both here. Thanks for joining us. It's a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
What is the narrative, Ben, of Mr. Conservative?
Well, I got the idea to write this play from reading an editorial in the Republic back in 1994, and they had just placed Don't Ask, Don't Tell into as part of the military's policy. And it was an editorial that was saying that the writer didn't think that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a good idea, and that gays should have the right to serve in the military. And what difference does it make what your sexual preference is if you're willing to fight and die for your country? And I got to the end of the editorial, and it was signed Barry Goldwater. And I thought, what? So it got me interested, and then I started doing some reading about him. I mean, I grew up here in Arizona. Barry Goldwater's been part of the landscape forever, but that's what got me into it.
With that in mind, who is Barry Goldwater in this play?
You mean who is the actor, or
what Barry Gold? Who do we meet up there on that stage?
Okay, in a play, you have to have conflict, and writing a one-person show is very difficult because you only have one person. So where do you have conflict, right?
Right.
So I saw the conflict immediately. That here was this man who came to be known as Mr. Conservative, the father of the modern conservative movement, political movement in this country, who I found, from what he said, and going back all the way to the very beginning, was consistent over his entire life, was really at odds with what I knew the Republican Party to be present day.
Does that sound like the Barry Goldwater you knew?
You know, it really does. I think Ben has captured parts of Barry Goldwater that people don't really realize. Not only was he pro-gay rights and pro-gay rights in the military long before it was popular, people don't realize he was pro-choice, not pro-life, and really for the same reasons with the homosexuality thing. His position was on abortion that he loathed abortion. He didn't want it, he didn't like it. But he used to say, that's not the issue. The issue is, should a woman make that decision with her own body, or should the government? And it was the same thing. We were flying back from Page, Arizona. He had given a speech one night. And I'll never forget him saying, when he was talking about homosexuality, he said, Bruce, just keep in mind that if the government can regulate homosexuality, they can regulate heterosexuality. So he was much more of a libertarian, I think, than a traditional conservative.
Would he be that same Barry Goldwater in today's climate, surrounded, Republican all the way, Barry Goldwater, by the party as it stands now?
Well, it'll be interesting to hear Ben's response to that, having lived with him and written this play. I've thought about that. I think there's elements, interestingly enough, of the Tea Party that he would respect in terms of, keeping government as small as possible. But he was a very complex person, and as I say, I really looked at him as more libertarian than conservative.
And the complex aspect of Barry Goldwater's personality, kind of the surprise that would pop up here and there among those who thought they knew him and those who thought they didn't like him all that much. How did you get that all worked into the play?
Well, one of the decisions I made early on was to not tell this story chronologically. I think that's a real mistake, especially when you're dealing with a biographical piece. If, I was born in 1911, it would just, you'd immediately start, sorting out. So the play moves forward just as people have talk. It segues from subject to subject. But I found myself, and I am not a progressive. I am a liberal. I'm very proud to say that. The word progressive kind of bothers me, but liberal's kind of gotten a bad name. But as I was reading and studying about him, I found myself agreeing with so much. I just thought, here's something that we can find common ground.
Did he become some? You know how when you write, you're a playwright. You know this from the gut. You write a character, and all of a sudden the character says, "No, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this."
Truly.
Did Barry Goldwater say that to you?
Yes, and that happens all the time. And I think when that happens as a writer, you feel like you're on the right track. Because, you start out with an idea in your head about what it's going to be. But really, I think, going back to what Bruce said, To me, the point of this play is maximizing freedom for the individual. I really think if you were to boil it down to one sentence, that was what Goldwater's point of view was, maximizing freedom for the individual. And I think that's traditionally what conservatives are looking for. And he said that it was something that went back to the ancient Greeks.
Yep. Ring a bell with you?
Oh, absolutely. And I think along with that, a very important part of his personality, where I hope Ben tells the story well, I've been involved with a lot of politicians across the country for a number of years. One of the things that I respect most about Barry Goldwater, and I think is very relevant today, is I never one time ever heard him say something to somebody and then say something in the opposite direction behind their back. Mm-hmm. I mean, I want to tell you, I was in meetings with Barry Goldwater. If he didn't like you or if he didn't like something, he looked you right in the eye and he told you what he thought.
True.
And there's not many politicians, I think, that can really stand up to that test.
Interesting. Ben, you wrote a quote from you on this play is, when opposing political ideologies are followed to their natural outer limits, there exists a place where they find common ground. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
Well, this is what I found as I was reading and studying him, is I always considered myself to be on the other side of the fence from conservatism, but then when I started reading what his idea of it was, I thought, I agree with this. And I think that's what happens when you follow this out to the right and to the left, that eventually there's a place where they do meet up. And these days, today, with as polarized as things are, we need it more than ever, I think.
Yeah, we need it more than ever, but can it happen these days with things as polarized as they are?
It's going to be very tough. You know, you have to be very careful. The reason that these people were able to get decisions made, Senator Goldwater and his colleagues, is they would go down in the Senate office building, shut the door, and take a bottle of whiskey, and you know, and they'd come out with a decision. Well, would that fly today? No, there's too much. It's not transparent enough. So, you know, society has changed, and I think one of the interesting things is Barry Goldwater was ideal for that particular time. I think as Arizona grew into a state and the nation changed.
What do you hope to gain? What do you want to happen by the moderated discussion after the play? What are you looking for there?
Well, I think what Ben's looking for, which I really think is good, is to have a discussion on both dimensions that Barry Goldwater brings to what is really, I agree with Ben, conservatism is part of what we call liberalism today. I mean, the terms really mean very little today. There's philosophical conservatism. You can be conservative on the economy. You can be conservative or liberal on social issues. So I think the bringing those two dimensions together is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I think it will be. And I just, you know, Bruce, maybe you know the answer to this. Why don't they hammer out compromises anymore? Why has compromise become a dirty word in politics, it seems? I mean, when I hear a lot of these people coming up through the Tea Party, I will not compromise on anything. Well, how? To me, that's the nature of politics. You have to.
Yeah. Last response.
Well, I was going to say we don't have enough time to go into it. I think a lot of it, we talked about change, a lot of it is these people play to the media today because they can talk to their constituents to get reelected rather than doing what's best for the country.
All right. Well, it should be a fascinating evening. It was good discussion, good play, and a good discussion after the play. And it's good to have you both here to talk about Barry Goldwater.
Well, thanks. There'll be a full production of this play in May of 2012 as part of the centennial celebration.
All right.
This is sort of a sneak preview for the audience.
All right. Thanks a lot. Good to see you both.
Thank you.